Ma'am, sir, I need to see your ID. Now.
I live here. I'm from Texas. What's your legal reason to stop me?
Step out of the vehicle.
It was 2047 p.m. on a Thursday in September when Daryl Mason rolled his wheelchair through the automatic doors of the Davidson County Municipal Building in North Carolina. He had an appointment at 32 renew his disabled parking placard. The lobby was quiet, nearly empty, except for a custodian mopping near the elevators and two security officers stationed at the entrance checkpoint. Daryl had made this trip twice before. It usually took 20 minutes. He was 38 years old. A car accident 7 years earlier had severed his spinal cord at T6. He had no sensation or movement below his mid-chest. He worked part-time as a data analyst from home, lived alone in a ground-floor apartment, and drove a modified van with hand controls. He was not political. He did not go looking for confrontation. He had simply learned to navigate a world not built for him. As he approached the metal detector, he reached into the side pouch of his wheelchair and pulled out his keys, phone, and wallet, placing them in the gray plastic bin. He had done this dozens of times in courthouses, hospitals, government buildings. The routine was automatic. Officer Clayton Rich stood on the other side of the detector. He was 42, white, with a shaved head and a neck that seemed to disappear into his shoulders. He had been with Davidson County Security for 9 years. He wore a badge, a radio, and a firearm on his hip. His partner, Officer Lou, stood near the X-ray monitor, scrolling through her phone. Daryl rolled forward slowly. The detector beeped. Officer Rich raised one hand. "Stop. Back up." Daryl stopped. "It's the chair," he said. "Metal frame. Happens every time." Rich's face didn't change. "I said back up." Daryl reversed 2 feet. He'd been through this before. Usually they waved him through or used a handheld wand. He waited. Rich stepped around the detector and looked down at him. "Stand up." There was a pause. Not long. Maybe 2 seconds. But in that silence, something shifted. "I can't stand," Daryl said. His voice was even, patient. "I'm paralyzed." Rich folded his arms. "I need you to stand so I can check the chair." "I just told you, I can't." "Are you refusing to comply?" Daryl's hands tightened on the armrests. His heart rate ticked up. He could feel Lee watching now. "I'm not refusing anything. I physically cannot stand. I can move forward so you can check the chair, or you can use the wand." Rich didn't move. "I don't know what you got in that chair." "It's a wheelchair." "I don't know that." Daryl exhaled slowly. He had been here before. Not this exact moment, but close enough. The tone. The look. The deliberate misunderstanding. "Sir, I have a placard renewal appointment upstairs in 10 minutes. I've been through this building before. The chair is just a chair. You can inspect it. I'm happy to cooperate." Rich leaned in slightly. "You getting smart with me?" "No, because it sounds like you're getting smart." Lou finally spoke. "Clayton, just wand him." Rich didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on Daryl. "I'll do my job, you do yours." He circled the wheelchair slowly, making a show of it. He ran his hand along the backrest, the armrests, under the seat. He crouched down and looked at the footrests. Even though Daryl's legs rested lifelessly on them, his feet strapped in with Velcro. Then Rich stood up and said, "Get out of the chair." Daryl stared at him. "What? You heard me. I told you, I'm paralyzed. I can't get out." "Then how'd you get in?" Daryl's jaw tightened. "I transfer using my arms. From my car to the chair. But I can't do it here. Not on this floor. I'd need a surface, and I'd need privacy." Rich smiled. It wasn't friendly. Sounds like an excuse. It's not. A lot of people fake disabilities. The words landed flat and hard. Daryl felt his chest constrict. He looked past Rich to Lou, who had put her phone down but said nothing. He looked at the custodian, who had stopped mopping and was staring. "I'm not faking," Daryl said quietly. "Prove it." "How do you want me to prove it?" Rich shrugged. "Stand up." Daryl's voice rose for the first time. "I can't stand up. What part of paralyzed do you not understand?" "Watch her tone." "I'm watching my tone just fine." "You're the one making this a problem." Rich straightened. "You're being non-compliant and disruptive. I have the authority to deny you entry." "For what? For being disabled?" "For refusing a lawful security screening." "I didn't refuse anything. Rich stepped closer. Close enough that Daryl had to tilt his head back to maintain eye contact. You got two choices. Get out of that chair so I can inspect it properly, or turn around and leave. Daryl's breathing was shallow now. He could feel his pulse in his neck. He thought about his appointment. He thought about the hour-long drive. He thought about the 3 weeks it had taken to schedule this. He thought about complying. He thought about what compliance would even look like in this situation. If I leave, he said, I'm filing a complaint. Rich's smile widened. Go ahead. Daryl reversed his chair. His hands were shaking. He turned toward the door, rolled 10 feet, then stopped. He pulled out his phone and opened a camera app. He turned it around, pointing it back at the checkpoint. Rich's expression changed instantly. Put that away. I'm allowed to record in a public building. Not security procedures, you're not. Yes, I am. It's legal. Rich started walking toward him. I'm ordering you to stop recording. Daryl kept the phone up. I'm not breaking any law. Rich reached out and grabbed the phone from Daryl's hand. The movement was sudden, aggressive. Daryl tried to hold on, but Rich twisted it free. The phone clattered to the floor. Hey, Daryl shouted. Rich bent down, picked it up, and held it in his fist. You just assaulted an officer. You grabbed my phone. You were non-compliant. You are non-compliant. You escalated, and now you're under detention. For what? Rich didn't answer. He turned and called over his shoulder. Lou, call it in. We got a disruptive individual refusing to comply with security protocol. Lou hesitated. Clayton, come on. Just let him go. Call it in. She picked up her radio. Daryl sat there, his phone in Rich's hand, his heart hammering in his chest. He could not move his legs. He could not run. He could not physically defend himself. He was locked in place, entirely dependent on the goodwill of a man who had none. 2 more officers arrived within 5 minutes. One of them, Sergeant Howell, was older, black, with gray in his beard. He took one look at the scene and his face tightened. What's going on? Howell asked. Rich launched into his version. Uncooperative subject. Refused screening. Became verbally aggressive. Started recording security procedures unlawfully. Physically threatened officer. Daryl interrupted. That's not what happened. Howell raised a hand. I'll get to you. He looked at Rich. Where's the phone? Rich handed it over. Howell turned it on. The screen was still open to the camera app, but the recording had stopped when Rich grabbed it. Howell scrolled. He didn't say anything. Then he looked at Luau. What did you see? Lou shifted her weight. He wouldn't get out of his chair for inspection. Why not? He said he's paralyzed. Howell looked at Daryl, at the wheelchair, at the strapped feet and motionless legs, then back at Rich. You asked a paralyzed man to stand up? I asked him to exit the chair for inspection. Same thing. It's protocol. It's not protocol to humiliate someone. Rich's face flushed. I was doing my job. Howell turned to Daryl. You hurt? No. But he took my phone. Howell handed it back. You're free to go. Daryl stared at him. That's it? I'll handle this internally. Internally? He violated my rights. He discriminated against me. I understand you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm telling you what happened. Howell's voice softened, but it also hardened. I'm telling you you're free to go. If you want to file a formal complaint, there's a process. But right now, this is resolved. Daryl looked at Rich, who was staring at the wall with his arms crossed, his jaw clenched. He looked at Lou, who wouldn't meet his eyes. He looked at Hal, who clearly wanted this to disappear. He turned his chair and rolled out the door. He missed his appointment. That night, Daryl sat in his apartment and wrote everything down. Every word he could remember. Every detail. The time, the date, the names on the badges. He didn't sleep. At 6 a.m., he called the Davidson County ADA Compliance Office and left a message. At 9 a.m., he sent an email to the county administrator's office describing the incident and requesting a formal investigation. He received an auto reply. 3 days later, he got a phone call from a woman named Diane Pruitt, the county's human resources director. She was polite, apologetic, concerned. She asked him to come in and give a statement. He did. He sat across from her in a small conference room and recounted the entire incident again. She took notes. She thanked him. She said they would look into it. 2 weeks passed. Then a letter arrived. It was from the county administrator's office. It thanked him for bringing the matter to their attention. It stated that Officer Rich had been given additional training on disability accommodations and ADA compliance. It stated that the matter was considered resolved. There was no apology. Darrell read the letter 3 times. Then he called a civil rights attorney named Marcus Lyle. Lyle's office was in Durham, 40 minutes away. Lyle himself was in his 50s, a former public defender who had spent the last decade litigating police misconduct and discrimination cases. He listened to Darrell's story without interrupting. When Darrell finished, Lyle leaned back in his chair and said, "Do you have any evidence?" "My testimony." "Anything else?" The custodian saw it. Maybe the other officer, Luwal. "Will they talk?" "I don't know." Lyle tapped his pen on the desk. "Here's the problem. It's your word against his. The county will claim he was following protocol. They'll say you were uncooperative. They'll point to the retraining and call it accountability. Without video, without a witness willing to go on record, this is a tough case." Darrell felt something crack inside him. "So that's it? He gets away with it?" "I didn't say that." Lyle opened his laptop and started typing. "I'm going to file a formal complaint with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. I'm also going to file a lawsuit under the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 1983 for violation of your civil rights. It's going to take time. It's going to be exhausting. But if you're willing, we'll fight it." Darrell nodded. "I'm willing." The lawsuit was filed on November 4th. It named Officer Clayton Rich, Sergeant Howell, and Davidson County as defendants. It sought compensatory and punitive damages, policy reform, and a public acknowledgement of wrongdoing. The county's response came 6 weeks later. They denied all allegations. They claimed Rich had acted within his authority. They argued that Darrell had been uncooperative and that the situation had been handled appropriately. They moved to dismiss. The case moved into discovery. Lyle subpoenaed security footage from the building. The county's legal team responded that the cameras at the checkpoint had malfunctioned that day and no footage existed. Lyle subpoenaed personnel records for Officer Rich. The record showed 3 prior complaints, 2 for excessive force, 1 for racial profiling. All 3 had been investigated internally and deemed unsubstantiated. Lyle subpoenaed the custodian. His name was Miguel Torres. He agreed to give a deposition. In it, he stated clearly that he had witnessed the entire encounter, that Officer Rich had been aggressive and demeaning, that Darrell had been calm and respectful, that Rich had grabbed the phone without provocation. The county's attorney tried to discredit him, suggested his English wasn't strong enough to understand what had been said, suggested he had a grudge against security staff. Torres didn't budge. Lyle subpoenaed Officer Liu. She gave a deposition too. It was more cautious. She confirmed that Rich had asked Darrell to exit the chair. She confirmed that Darrell had said he was paralyzed, but when asked if she thought Rich had acted improperly, she said she couldn't speak to his intent. Lyle pressed. "Did you think it was appropriate to ask a paralyzed man to stand?" "I don't make those calls." "But you were there. You saw it." "I saw security screening." "Did you see discrimination?" She paused for a long time. Then she said, "I saw a situation that could have been handled differently." It wasn't much, but it was something. In March, 5 months after the lawsuit was filed, a local news station picked up the story. A reporter named Jasmine Cole contacted Darrell and asked for an interview. He agreed. The segment aired on a Thursday evening. It was 4 minutes long. It showed Darrell in his apartment, describing the incident. It showed the municipal building. It included a statement from Marcus Lyle. It included a no comment from the county. The video was posted online. It got 70,000 views in 2 days. The pressure began to build. Community groups held a rally outside the municipal building. Disability rights advocates showed up. The NAACP showed up. Signs read, "Dignity is a right," and "Accountability now." Local clergy gave speeches. Darrell spoke for 3 minutes. His voice shook, but he didn't stop. The county issued a statement expressing commitment to inclusivity and promising a review of security protocols. But they still didn't settle. In April, the case went to mediation. A federal mediator sat both sides down in a conference room and tried to broker a resolution. The county offered $15,000 and a private apology. No admission of wrongdoing. No policy change. Lyle looked at Daryl. Daryl shook his head. The mediation failed. The trial was scheduled for September. But in August, something unexpected happened. A second complaint was filed against Officer Clayton Rich, this time by a white woman named Emily Kowalski. She was deaf. She had gone to the same building to contest a traffic ticket. Rich had refused to allow her interpreter past security, claiming it was a one-person per appointment rule that didn't exist. When she tried to explain using her phone to type, he accused her of being disruptive and had her removed from the building. She hired a lawyer. She filed a federal lawsuit. The county could no longer call it isolated. In late August, the county's legal team reached out to Marcus Lyle. They wanted to talk settlement. This time, the offer was different. $250,000. A public apology. Mandatory retraining for all security staff. An independent review of ADA compliance across all county facilities. And Officer Clayton Rich would be terminated. Lyle presented it to Daryl. Daryl sat in silence for a long time. Then he said, "What about the others? The ones who complained before me? They settled privately. Small amounts. NDAs. So they were silenced." "Yes." Daryl looked out the window. "If I take this, does it stop him from doing it again somewhere else?" "The termination does. He'll have this on his record. It'll follow him. But he's not going to jail." "No. This is civil, not criminal." Daryl nodded slowly. "I want the apology to be public. I want it read at a county meeting. I want it on record. We can make that happen. And I want the policy changes in writing. I want them implemented within 6 months, and I want quarterly reports." Lyle smiled. "I'll add it to the terms." Daryl signed the settlement agreement on September 12th. The public apology was delivered on September 20th at a Davidson County Board of Supervisors meeting. It was read by the county administrator, a man named Robert Keene, who looked uncomfortable the entire time. The apology acknowledged that Daryl Mason had been subjected to discrimination and mistreatment. It acknowledged that the county had failed to protect his rights. It committed to doing better. Daryl was in the audience. He didn't smile. He didn't clap. He just listened. Officer Clayton Rich was terminated on September 15th. He did not appeal. He did not speak to the press. He disappeared from public view. Officer Liu remained employed but was reassigned to administrative duties. Sergeant Howe retired 4 months later. The county implemented new ADA training for all security personnel. They installed new signage. They updated their screening protocols. They hired a full-time ADA compliance officer. Emily Kowalski's case settled 3 months later for a similar amount and similar terms. Daryl Mason used part of the settlement to pay off his medical debt. He used another part to install a lift system in his apartment. He donated $10,000 to a disability rights nonprofit in North Carolina. He still lives in the same apartment. He still works from home. He still drives the same modified van. But when he goes to the Davidson County Municipal Building now, security waves him through. No one asks him to stand. If you've witnessed or experienced discrimination, document everything. Know your rights. And don't stay silent.